we wouldn't have had to go through all this if, they had done what I had told them to do
Yeah.
in the very beginning. It goes to that old Woody Woodpecker cartoon. If Woody had gone straight to the police,
This
this
never
never
would have happened.
right, this never would happen. And, it really just goes to show you why these people needed to get out of office.
Welcome to the TOWTalk Podcast. My name is Denise, and I'm here with my co-host Neil. And today we got a number of things to cover. So this is going to be a long one. I'll be sure to break it up to make it easy for you. But we're going to get started. Today we're going to cover Thursday's town board meeting. We're gonna cover issues with fredophilia. We're gonna call it fredophilia just so that YouTube doesn't knock us off.
Don't make fun of friends. Don't make fun of people who
I
are
know
named
that's an
Fred.
insult.
You put them in the same boat.
I know, right?
Oh.
But we're gonna address that. We're gonna address some things that were said by Megyn Kelly. We're gonna address releasing the files, and not just the Epstein files, but files right here in the town. We've got our own scandal to talk about. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So, Neil, you were at I don't know if you were at it or you watched it on Zoom. Okay, you watched it on Zoom, the town board meeting. So, what is going on there?
Well, breaking news again. Nobody cares, but here we are. We're doing it again. Listen, it was a very interesting meeting. I want to take people back just so that we can kind of refresh where we all are. Bring anybody up to speed as to where the town was. So, basically there were a lot of complaints going way back, probably about 10 years about the town's financials and where the, and the delay of financial information and the accuracy of financial information, all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, I know it's kind of boring in your municipality and you may decide that this isn't for you, but at the end of the day, that's really what your local municipality is. They're managing money and providing services with that money.
Right.
So there were a bunch of issues where the former supervisor was apparently, accusations made by the former town comptroller of the town. The supervisor at the time was claiming he wasn't getting financial information. We've learned since that through the state comptroller's draft audit that the financial information was not accurate, that there were problems with the financial statements, that they weren't budgeting accurately, they were overcharging the residents of the town via their taxes and the services that were being provided as a result of those taxes. I know I'm giving you a very quick summary of this. $400,000 was stolen.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Allegedly by the New York State comptroller or a member of the New York State comptroller's office who was auditing the town's finances. And that happened over a period of time.
I think about 8 months, right? 8 or 9 months.
Right. Yeah, about eight or 9 months. And then there was, the town's loss of its bond rating and the town still being, was it 3 years behind in their financial information, and I think now spending $350,000 in 1 year to try to fix what they broke, right? Fix what they broke.
Yeah, exactly.
So that sort of brings us to where we are now, right? That's the quick summary of bringing us up to speed of this complete
so in a
dumpster
nutshell,
fire.
Yes, in a nutshell, it's a dumpster fire. Yeah.
Right. So that sort of brings us up to speed as to where we are. Now, I want to take everybody back to before I get into this past meeting, which was very somber. Obviously, this is the first meeting after the election, so not much happening. They held their public hearing on the budget. As I've mentioned previously, it's a budget where they are claiming a $2.8 million budget deficit. So they're going to spend more money than they're bringing in. This has been a trend of theirs. Obviously, we know based on the comptroller's information, this is not even remotely what is going on, right? What we had been told by the state comptroller's office is that they were what was it, under budgeting their revenues by $4 million and overstating their expenses by $3 million. So that means that they were budgeting I guess you could say, surplus of $7 million, but then a $2.8 million. So at the end of the day, it's about a $4 million. If you do the fuzzy math, right, of this whole thing, right, it's about a $4 million budgetary surplus on an annualized basis. Supposedly. We don't know.
We don't know.
Right?
We're not going to know until they get in there.
We're not going to know because, again, they're 3 years behind. So, let's leave it at that. So, bringing us now where we are now. So I'm going to share video. I'm going to share basically 3 videos right in a row, very little commentary on my part to discuss them because I want to make sure that people, hear the correct information and I want to hear your comments as to once we get through this. All right. Okay. Here's the first video. All right.
What's also going to be used for O'Connor Davis, who's going to also help to try to work on 23 and 24. Like I stated yesterday, if you remember correctly, I said hopefully 23 and 24 will be done within the next 2 months.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we heard there, George said that the financials will be done in the next 2 months. Now I want to get to the next video, right? Now, as we all know, when Mr. Carr ran for supervisor, he was giving information. He seemed to have a lot more information than other people, all right, related to the finances. So let's hear what he had to say.
And I pledge this. I pledge that in the first quarter of 2026, we'll be up to date with our financial statements. It is important. It's not because of laundering, although that's important.
Right. So we hear that again. All right. Now we got the last one. All right.
Hopefully 23, we will be looking to close by the end of the year. It might be done by January.
Okay, because January through April, the accountings are going to be working on closing other books for 2025 for people. So we're not going to get our 2025 even done until sometime into next year. Yeah. And to get our credit rating back, the recovery for that is going to take some time. That means, everybody's promising, the election season, we can get things fixed right away, but we don't. This is going to take some time. What's that?
I didn't promise you we'll get fixed.
Oh, no. I mean, everybody, promise and stuff. But we understand it's going to take some time and stuff, but we'd like to know more about it, the more of the progress going on. Okay. I see we have a copy of the budget. Can we get a copy that's online they can download as an Excel document?
All right. So what are your thoughts on those 3 statements? So we heard George initially say that everything would be done by year end. Okay. Then we heard Ralph Carr saying end of the first quarter, he would have everything done. And then we hear George say again at this meeting about 2 months later, no, I never said, right? He's like, I never said we would have it done by the end of the year. We'll have 2023 done by the end of the first quarter.
Wow. Right? Yeah.
That's what he said.
I mean, nobody's got their story straight. And it just speaks volumes about how fucked up finances are in this town. They're just saying shit off the top of their head and they're hoping people will forget, because most people don't attend. So that clip, the last clip was from Thursday's town board meeting, correct?
Wednesday's
town board meeting, which the last town board meeting, the room was packed. And this one we have, again, most people didn't know that it was going to be this much earlier. I think, if it was me, I would have thought that meeting would have been this coming Thursday, since the following Thursday is Thanksgiving. So that just speaks to just being in communication with the public and letting them know that these changes are coming, or not just counting on the fact that there's a sign on Tower Drive. If you're not on Tower Drive, you didn't see the sign, you didn't know when the meeting was happening.
Right.
And so
if you don't, the local paper, they don't put anything online.
Well,
they don't put anything on social media. They don't advertise anything related to town business.
And that is That's actually going to be another point that we will get into near the end of the session where we're talking about information, the flow of information locally. So, all right, moving on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really do think that that is really important for people to understand, because it's not just at the federal level, it's not just at the state level where these politicians, right, are either just selling you on something
Yeah.
that they want you to believe. And that's what it is, right? It's a sell.
Yes.
They may have an idea of what's actually going on, but now they're trying to sell you on whatever it is that you are willing to buy.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And we're seeing this more, and this has become more and more prevalent, okay, at all levels of government. This idea of it's about what we can sell you. It's not about what the truth is. We don't care what the truth is. The truth is irrelevant.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's what we can sell you. And that's what happened. I mean, we heard, right, the supervisor say, right, out of his own lips, by year end, we're going to have everything done, right? Then you had, the candidate who was running with these people, okay, running with the people who were in office, saying by the end of the first quarter, everything will be done. And now now that the election is over, right, you're hearing a little bit more,
Which is probably
right?
yeah, and now
Probably closer
to
to
the
the
truth.
right?
And in this case, we'll be lucky if we get 2023 done by the end of the first quarter. When before
Correct.
it was we're going to have it all done. We're going to be all up to date by the end of
Right.
at least by the end of January, if not the end of this December. So it's just it's just lip service. Just telling you
Right.
what you want to hear.
And not for nothing, what this revealed to me, right, was, exactly what I was afraid of. I
Yeah.
had I
Yeah.
had described this to a friend of mine, who used to own his own small business. And I mentioned a lot of the issues that was revealed to me during when Supervisor Dendanto, his first term in office, had relayed to me, right? The idea that bank recs were a year and a half behind, that there were a lot of money that were owed between accounts, right? Between funds,
Yeah.
between like the different businesses of the town, all these little things. And he had flat out said to me, he said, your books are gonna need to be rebuilt from the ground. Okay. And given the money that the town is spending and the, amount of effort that's going on, either they are completely overpaying for what it is, or they have to rebuild their books from ground up.
Yeah, of course.
And that to me is a real disservice to the residents of this town, because we wouldn't have had to go through all this if, they had done what I had told them to do
Yeah.
at the very beginning. It goes to that old Woody Woodpecker cartoon. If Woody had gone straight to the police,
This
this
never
never
would have happened.
right, this never would happen. And, it really just goes to show you why these people needed to get out of office. Now, two of these people are going to be remaining in office. They kept their seats. It'll be interesting to see what happens, right? Because they didn't seem to care about the amount of money that was being spent to fix the accounting, for the last 4 years or 2 years, whatever they spent, right? They didn't seem to care about the $1 million that they spent to cover things up, right? And tell the public that there wasn't a problem. But now that you have Supervisor Dendanto or Supervisor Dendanto elect getting into office, it'll be very interesting to see, right, what kind of rhetoric.
Well, you'll see the contrast in how, now are you going to see a different side? And if there is anything there that's hidden, it's going to be his objective to dig it up. And along with the
Right, but it's going to be their objective now to cover it up, right? So you're going to see that happen. We don't
Yes.
want to spend any money. This isn't the way things are done. This is BS, right? You're going to hear, I had spent 6 years before Ed Diana came in, okay? Right, saying this isn't legal, this isn't the way we're supposed to be doing things, all that kind of stuff, right? Then when George got in, okay, then when Frank got in, all of a sudden I spent 2 years fighting with them, okay, right? Because now all of a sudden they were saying, well, I know that Ed Diana did all these things, and I know that Dan DePew did all these things, and I know all the predecessors did all these things.
And therefore it
But
makes it
now
okay for
we're
them.
saying, right, now we're saying it's not okay anymore, right? And that's what you're going to see. And again, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, right, are we going to follow the proper process, right? Like there so I have emails, documented emails of the budget officer, who is the town supervisor, Frank Dendanto, at the time, who had requested that certain items be put in the budget. Okay. I have emails from the town comptroller at the time, right, saying she removed them
Really?
and then refused to put them back in. Okay. She wasn't the budget officer.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Okay. Right. And she took them out. And I have emails from her saying that that's exactly what happened. Okay. And she took them out at the request of one of the board members. Right. That, right, is illegal.
Hey guys, so we just had some technical difficulties because Neil's camera has a life of its own and loves to just zoom in real close if you just wave at it. So anyway, so we were talking about the board meeting and issues with how money's being spent and how the books are going to be dealt with, and the fact that now the story is changing. I have a question about that. So now we have basically a new administration coming in with a new supervisor and a new council person. So we're going to have a 3-2. The Democrats are going to have a 3-2 majority. Will there be any type of interaction between the current leadership and Frank coming in, so there is a transition, a communication between them?
I would honestly hope so. A lot more these days, though. I'll be honest. You don't see a lot of that being done. As I kind of mentioned, I believe on one of our last shows, when Stevenella, who was the councilman for the 3rd Ward, when he got elected and he was councilman-elect, and he got elected to my seat, he wasn't even allowed to walk in the parade.
In the holiday parade.
Right. I mean, we've always had, so in the years that I was there, okay, even going back to Ed Diana, right, and Supervisor Serrano, or not Serrano, Supervisor Dendanto, when you had councilmen and supervisors going out, right, and you had councilmen and supervisors coming in, they were allowed in the meetings, okay, and not just the regular meetings, they were allowed in the executive sessions that were occurring. And the reason for that was to bring them up to speed, to ensure that there was continuity of government. And Supervisor Dendanto allowed Supervisor Serrano to do that as well, right? There was that. But when Supervisor Serrano was in office, he didn't offer that same courtesy to Councilman Vanilla.
Wow.
At the time. We didn't see that. Okay. I would, I think that trend will probably continue. I would hope not. The election's over. The idea is we need continuity in government. We need to, but what we're seeing is with this partisanship, with this nonsense, with this BS,
Yeah.
that continues to move on. We're seeing something different. So I'm hopeful, but I have to give the reality that that it may not happen.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting.
It would be unfortunate.
It would be very
It would be
unfortunate.
really unfortunate.
I would be interested, and I'm going to cover this a little bit more later, but if you're watching and you're from another township, particularly if you're involved in town government in some way or in covering your local government, I'd be curious to see if this type of stuff is happening in your town, whether you're in another town in Orange County, New York, if you're in the state of New York or somewhere else in the country. I would be curious to see, because the partisanship that we're seeing, and it's very extreme now. It's beyond, there's like no working together anymore in government. And that's very bad because we're the ones that suffer for that. But speaking to that, it extends down. When they see up at the top they're doing this, then it will extend to the states, and then the local government says, well, we can do this shit too. We can be this way too. And it harms, it's harming us as a country, but it harms us all the way down at the local community level. And it benefits no one. because then nothing gets done. And then you have situations like this where we have possibly a very serious financial issue going on with our tax dollars. Who knows what's going to be found if we really dig hard enough? And without, with this partisanship, there's a motive on their part, the current leadership, to bury as much of that information versus trying to work with the incoming administration and say, hey, these are some of the things we have. Let's work to clear it up. And if you don't want to work together, then they're going to try to bury it. And that could be even more damaging in the long run.
But we're seeing that at all levels of government,
Yeah.
right? Like, we're seeing that at the federal level, right? Like, we keep hearing about Doge savings, but then we hear about the cost of Doge, right? And then we hear about, I was told back I was going to get a $2,000 Doge check, right?
I thought it was
and
$5.
that never came, right?
That's not coming. And now it's a
right,
$2,000
and now all of a
rebate.
sudden, and now it's a $2,000 tariff check, right? Like, the problem is that finances, especially government finances, are this nebulous of nobody knows and nobody cares. And the people who do know and the people who do care are the people who are in the world, right? Who this is their daily lives.
Yeah.
Okay. I saw it recently. I forgot who it was trying to pay tribute to the people who work in government for 30 years, like the people who've dedicated their lives to government work, right? Like your air traffic controllers, your inspector generals, your people, not your politically appointed positions, but the people who are there doing your audits, doing your, the budgets and all those things, right? Like, not your political, not your lobby. And, the unfortunate thing is those people are not only being stifled, but they're being called liars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? By the same politicians that we just heard, that continue to lie, right, and mislead to make themselves feel better, right? Like it's all like, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. This is great.
It's always everybody else's fault. After a while, I think people are I think we're starting to see some change where some people are starting to say, you can't be perfect all the time because nobody's perfect. And eventually people are starting to question. And, but I wish it would happen faster.
I think the issue really comes down to what really happened here, right? I think this is a class. This is a case, right? It's a case study of what really happened here and how do we fix it, right? Like, we have our own problems here. Everybody is talking about releasing files, right? Like, we have our own files that we want released on the local level, right? We want financial information. Not only that, the whole case against the former supervisor, right, is predicated on a 45-second audio clip that was taken from an hour and a half meeting. An hour and a half meeting that was never released to anybody.
Right. So let's go into that. Speaking of scandals, and I think we can talk about this now that the election is over. We can talk more, definitively about it. You were saying there was a meeting, an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting, and he made a comment that had some questionable language in the comment, and the recording, they parsed that little piece out of that recording and used that as a framework to build a harassment case against Frank Dendanto. But this meeting, there was a witness there, correct?
Yeah, there actually was. So there was another town employee that was there who was being verbally accosted and verbally abused by the town comptroller, who was claiming that the supervisor was doing that to her. So this clearly was a very heated meeting, right? It was clearly very tense. We've all been in those meetings where you're trying to ascertain information, somebody doesn't want to give you information, and you're becoming frustrated. I don't know anybody in the business world who hasn't been in one of those situations at some point in time in their career or another. And, the supervisor and he's admitted this, maybe he shouldn't have said what he had said, but it was through frustration that he said it. It wasn't directed at anybody. It was directed at the frustration he was feeling by being spun around in circles. I know from personal experience, having spoken to that individual, that's a real feeling. Right? Like I had many of those conversations where I got spun around in circles and, came out and information didn't sit right with me. In fact, I have tapes from the town's auditors where that was happening to them and they were getting frustrated by those conversations. So I and again, I had learned through this process that there were 20 hours of tapes, but only this 45
seconds.
40 no well I don't know, again, I don't know what was actually given to the town's attorneys or the investigative attorney, but the investigative attorney, I don't know whether they had the whole clip or they only had the 45 seconds.
But
nobody would tell me.
My understanding is that the basis of the claim was on that 45 seconds worth.
Actually not. So what the other side continues to put out there is that there were that somehow the supervisor, Dendanto, was somehow convicted of 16 counts.
Wasn't convicted of anything.
Right. There was never a conviction. In fact, I was there. I heard the town attorney. I have a very good. I have her statement of it. Right. Is that in fact, they were accusations, but that they were unfounded, and that the town attorney basically, or the attorney investigating basically said that not only were they unfounded, that they did not rise to the level of harassment at all.
Well, there you go.
That there was no harassment. All right. So again, they are portraying something because it's easy for them to do, okay? But it doesn't bear any resemblance to the reality of the situation. And I think as a result of that, I think the public is entitled to the entire recording. Just like I think the public is entitled to, the Epstein files or whatever it is. The fact is that these are public documents. These do not belong to the individuals that they are claiming that they belong to, okay? Like, it's killing me. Who are these people, right? Like, we keep hearing town fathers, all these people that put themselves in the position saying, we can't release this information because of some type of confidentiality, or we were trying to protect. Who are you trying to protect?
Themselves.
What is actually happening, right? People deserve the information, okay? People deserve to see exactly what's going on. I wrote a over 100-page report. People deserve to be able to read that report, okay? People should be able to have the ability to read the information and come to their own conclusion, right? What we're getting is this idea that the politicians are going to try to sell us on something. They then use the media to try to perpetuate that propaganda and then turn to us and say, we now are required to make informed decisions based on no information whatsoever.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's where we are.
Right.
Truthfully, being able to release that full tape of that meeting would also give context into how the statement came about. I mean, it was a phrase said in the heat of the moment. It was not, and it wasn't something that just, that this was a daily exercise.
Ask any lawyer. I'm going to tell you this. Ask any lawyer. Go to any lawyer and ask them if cursing in the workplace is harassment.
Okay. Anybody watching
and
this?
Every lawyer will tell you the exact same thing. No, it's not. You can curse all you want in the workplace. Is it unprofessional? Yes, it's unprofessional. We could all agree that cursing in the workplace, is frowned upon and is considered unprofessional. It is absolutely 100% not harassment, right? Because if it was harassment, everybody would be suing. Everybody.
Hell yeah.
Everybody would be suing everybody.
Fuck yeah.
How many times have you been cursed in at the workplace? I mean, seriously. Ask yourself that. Have you never heard any of your coworkers
curse?
Oh,
please. All the time. I worked in a law office. It's just like commonplace.
Right. It's absolutely insane that people are thinking that phrase somehow. I mean, it may shock your sensibilities. It may be unprofessional, and you can call it unprofessional. You can call it any million number of things that you want. It isn't in the legal framework. It is not harassment in any way whatsoever.
There you go. Wow. So we'll say that we want the tape released. Release the file.
Yes, release the file.
And release the financial records too. We want those files too. Everybody wants that. So let's move on to more current events. So as more and more information, since we brought up Epstein, has come out, it seems that the right is now moving to normalize pedophilia. So Megyn Kelly, washed up Fox News host, bad lawyer, trash talking podcaster, she is not a stranger to saying some pretty absurd things and controversial things, but she said this earlier this week. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's hear this, and then this is just from the damage report, but this is all over the place. I'm sure you've heard it, but I'm going to play it again.
This person has told me from the start, years and years ago, that Jeffrey Epstein, in this person's view, was not a pedophile. This is this person's view, who was there for a lot of this, but that he was into the barely legal type.
So there you go. Let's talk about this. This is disturbing, and I realize she's trying to put it off. Well, that person, this is their thought that
was actually a tame comment of hers, though.
I don't think
there was another comment that she made on her podcast that was even, where she actually said, well, they're not 8-year-olds or 5-year-olds.
That was the one I was looking for.
Right. They're 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds,
And therefore it's not that bad. And this is very, very disturbing.
Yes.
And this is incredibly disturbing because what they're doing is they're normalizing behavior. I was actually really incensed when I heard that. I got on my phone and I started recording my anger. I was at work, I was just like really upset about it. It ticked me off because there's a lot of issues, and we're seeing this in states where, and they're red states, where they are looking to lower marriage ages, work ages to 14, 15 years of age. Now, closer to us in New Hampshire, which is actually more red state, there was a state legislator who wanted to address the marriage age. So I understand it was 14, not that long ago. It was 14 years of age of consent to be married. And this person, who I believe is actually is actually trans, okay? And I want to bring that up not because I want to just point out that they're trans, but that this is a person they're always accused of when it comes to children, that they're grooming children. No, this legislator in New Hampshire spoke up and said, that is way too low. We need to raise the age of consent for marriage to be a minimum of 18. And this person fought for it and was a Democrat. And the best they could do was that the Republicans would only raise it up to 16. So a 16-year-old can legally get married in the state of New Hampshire. And their argument for that was that we need young people. We need them while they're young and fertile to get married and have families. This is
they actually used that as
that was one of their reasonings. Yeah.
Oh my
I read
God.
this. Oh my God, I read this about 6 months ago. Yeah, I read this about 6 months ago. I will look it up, and if I
don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah,
I don't even know what to say to that.
This is what they're wanting. I mean, look, Nick Fuentes came out and said that's one of the things he said. Teenagers should be getting married, while they're fertile. Because here's the thing. We're at an age, we've evolved to a point, thanks to education, good health care, being able to get better paying jobs, establish careers for ourselves, for both men and women. People can wait to find the right person, get settled down, get a little financial pot of money, maybe set aside to buy a house or maybe buy a house, so that they have all their ducks in a row in place to be able to start a family, which makes sense because then you're going to have a more stable environment to raise a child in versus a couple of kids running off, getting married, having a baby, and not having any jobs, not having education to get a better paying job, and basically relying on parents to help get them through. And if they don't have that support system of family, then it's that much harder. And it makes it harder for them to even want to go to and get an education because you've got family to take care of, so you got to work. So now you have people working, like you said, we've said this before, working gig jobs because they don't have the skill set to be able to get a more professional career or even a trade. So that's why they're pushing. So this it's sort of a snowball effect, right? We talk about education. It's recently come up that educational scores came out, and guess where the red states landed? Okay, I'm gonna talk about iHip News. It's called the I've Had It podcast with Jennifer Welch and Pumps. She pointed out that about 15, 20 years ago, Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, ranked 15th nationwide in education. So in test scores, when they do these test scores, that's when the state was more purple. Now the state has gone completely red. They're pushing more towards religion into schools and trying to ban books, and test scores have sunk. They are now ranked down at the bottom. I think she said they're 50th in the country. And so when you start to take away education and you start to lower the age limit for consent, you force them to have kids, or you take away a woman's right to choose. So if they get pregnant, whether they're married or not married, and you're taking choice away, you're making it harder for them to get these establishments in place. And it's purposefully keeping people poor. It's a funny thing, and maybe you can find this while I'm talking. It just was like earlier this week where the Republicans actually admitted it. They said if these states had better education, they would vote Democrat. Did you see that? It was a
I did see that. I did see that poll. So there was a poll out that talked about education levels, and that the higher the education level, so the majority of people who have doctorate degrees vote Democratic. People who have bachelor's degrees are about 50-50, leaning a little bit higher on the Democratic side. And as you get down towards high school degree or no degree at all, they vote more Republican. So I did see that poll. It was actually a Fox News poll.
That's
shockingly
interesting.
enough.
That's
It was a
interesting.
Fox poll that they published, and so it was a very interesting poll. It coincided with the state of Florida basically adopting the Heritage Foundation's curriculum on education, which talks more about parental choice and is more in line with what the Moms of Liberty want, which is, more religion in school, more talking about indoctrination, talking about American history in terms of exactly what American history was, the facts, the good, the bad. I mean, the whole point of learning history is to learn lessons, to learn what not to repeat again. And the Heritage Foundation, their curriculum of history is more to teach obedience and this idea of we want people to be compliant. And only the version of history that we want them to know, that slavery was good, those type of things, So it's very it's really being done from very selfish position, to maintain power in what amounts to be the wealthy hands,
and keeping
right? The
keeping people from rising to that
Yes.
that wealth. And so when you take a person, she has 4 million subscribers on this platform on YouTube. And when you have a voice like her saying, well, teenagers, 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds are barely legal, it's beginning to normalize the idea that old men groping on young girls, sexually assaulting teenage girls, it's really not that bad. It's not like they were 8 or 9. And when you limit education and people aren't really, what's the word I'm looking for? Enlightened, woke. That's what woke really means, is enlightened to the fact that sexual assault at any age is bad. Doesn't matter whether it's 8 years old or 80 years old. It is bad across the board and it should not be normalized. And that is what she is doing.
It's right. Exactly what you're saying is, if you expand it out, right? If you look at everything, the way it is. So it recently came out, and this coincides with exactly what you're saying. It came out, Matt Gaetz, right? There's a whole Matt Gaetz scandal. It came out again, right? Where the girl, I'm calling her a girl, right? Like, she's not a young woman. She was a girl, right? All she wanted was braces.
Yeah.
And how abject poverty prevented her from getting braces. And she didn't have, she was in and out of foster care. She wanted to fix her teeth. This idea that
And he
about
exploited
food,
it.
right, about food insecurity. I mean, all these things go hand in hand. Education, food insecurity, right? When you start realizing what you're being sold, okay, and I put it that way because you are being sold something.
Yeah.
What you're being sold is abject poverty and servitude. Be loyal to your overlords, right? Be loyal to your overlords, and your overlords will take care of you. So I'm going to tell a joke.
That's
right?
not really happening, though. They're not taking
It
care
is
of anybody.
Right, but that is what's happening. That is what they're being told. So this is,
But
so
they're being told, but it's not, in reality, that's
Right.
not happening.
So we hear a lot about trickle-down economics, right? This idea of the rich people bequeathing something to us via the money that they have. So we keep giving our money to the rich, and somehow that will trickle down to us. And I recently heard a joke, and it was on a show, and it was really, really funny. The idea, missing Ronald Reagan, right?
I miss him.
One side, like, loves Ronald Reagan, and they think he's the be all end all. And recently Trump was offended by this advertisement that the Canadians did, which talked about tariffs, Ronald Reagan talking about tariffs, right? And what I found was funny was one of the comedians goes, I almost miss Ronald Reagan, right? Like, you get this idea, right? I'm kind of like, oh my God, I really think about it today. I kind of miss George W. Bush. Like, I mean, the guy was a freaking war criminal, but you kind of like realize where we are today, and you're like, wow, I kind of miss those days, right? And, and the other person says to them, you see, it took some time, but that, and missing that sort of admiration that you feel for those two presidents, right? Took time, but it trickled down to you. It eventually trickled down to you. You see? It worked. It eventually trickled down to you. It worked.
Oh my
there
God.
you go. All right.
That's something.
That feeling of missing George W. Bush and Ronald Reagan right now that you feel. I know you didn't feel it when it was happening, but I know you feel it now. It took time, but it eventually trickled down to you.
So what you're saying is, in like
worked.
In 20 years, we're gonna this era in the timeline is going to trickle down.
Listen, that's what trickle down means, right? Like, the idea that at some point in time, you're gonna be like, yeah, I see now.
I don't
get
think
it.
so. Oh my God. So this is where we are. They are now trying to normalize. They've gone from we're going to release the files, right? We heard for a decade. We heard for a decade about whether it was Epstein or that there was a secret cabal in government with a pedophile ring running, and it's being covered up by the Democrats or being covered up by people in government. And we heard this for 10 years. We heard Trump campaigned on releasing the Epstein files. Then we got to him getting into office, and Pam Bondi had the files. They were on her desk. They were going to release them.
Binders.
Binders. Then they discovered that there was a truckload, 2 truckloads of materials being held in the Southern District of New York because of they were related to the Ghislaine Maxwell's case. And we're getting those back. And then they handed out binders about this big, like binders. And like that was stuff that was already out in the public, that was already known. And that was a big thing. When we finally start getting closer and we begin to see that, yeah, maybe he's really in those files. Suddenly it's a hoax. It's a Democrat hoax, right? Now it's a hoax. Then it's not really a hoax. It's only a hoax as related to every Republican and every billionaire. But it's not a hoax. We're going to investigate all the Democrats. Like this is where we are, and this is kind of what we just talked about in town, where exactly what we just talked about.
It's about what they can sell to you, right?
Oh, the
This
bullshit.
This isn't about an issue. See, here's the thing, right? The people who are linked to Jeffrey Epstein, right? They're not poor people.
No, they're not.
Okay, they're not middle class people. They're not people like you and me who go to work every day and live our daily lives, right? This is a ring, right, of wealthy, right, people who are connected in some form, fashion, or another, right? Like who are linked to this oligarchy. And I wouldn't doubt, given the information that's already out, that we are talking about wars, that we're talking about classified information related to key individuals. We could be talking about bombings that could have occurred, right? Like, you don't know the information that was being passed, okay?
Yeah.
By these heads of state, by these wealthy individuals. I mean, these were connected people, okay? So this idea, you're being sold something, right? In order to say, we can't release this information because the releasing of this information, right, could lead to wars. It could lead to uprisings. It could lead to information being out into the public that would violate the public's everything that the public believes. Okay, so they have to make up a lie.
Yeah.
Because they have to. They don't have a choice now.
You know what? At this point, so let's take, for example, what happened at the beginning of the week. There were three emails that the Democrats released that that were pretty questionable, and so I guess the Republicans didn't really have a response to that. So what they decided to do was flood the zone and release roughly 20,000 emails, figuring nobody's going to be able to look through all of them. Well, guess what? You could use AI and you could zero in on what the fuck you want. You could even do a word search. Well, let me tell you, a lot of these emails are incredibly questionable, and they should be out. We do have a right to know because they really are exposing what our leaders might be truly like.
Well, I think the real issue, right? Not to interrupt you on this one, but the real issue is there have been many false flags.
Yes.
Throughout history that we now know of, right? The Gulf of Tonkin being one of them, right? Right, the ship out in, believe it's the Liberty, right? Like, we've heard all of these things. What if there are more? What if in these files there are more? What if, there are things in there that we have been told that one thing, a conflict or a war or a bombing or an assassination, whatever it may be, what happens if it's not true? What if the premise or anything we've been told is no longer true or no longer valid, right? You're talking about full governments being taken down as a result of this. I mean, we barely know we barely know the surface, right, of what's going on, but we know that Prince Andrew was involved, right? But we also know that
stripped of his title.
But we also know that Prince Charles, who's now King of England, right, may have also had some type of involvement.
Wow.
In some way or another, right? Like, he, Prince Andrew, it's not like he did everything on his own, right? Like, I mean,
True.
he was peddling influence. That's part of how he was able to get involved, was that he was peddling influence. A lot of these people were peddling their influence in order to get in, right? Like, it was money, it was women, money, and power, or girls, money, and power.
Yeah, girls,
children.
children.
Money, and power, right? And with that, you're talking about money, you're talking about wars, you're talking about defense contracts. You could be talking about any number of things, right? You look at the list of people who rode on the plane, the people who
Went to the island.
went to the island. I mean, it's crazy.
And he had cameras everywhere. I mean, just those 20,000 emails, there's a lot of interesting, very, very interesting information in there. So if you guys are following this podcast, you should also follow Kyle Kulinski's Secular Talk. And he did I guess it was with Crystal, with his wife Crystal. They did a breakdown of several of these very particular emails, and it's definitely worth the watch. It's called Secular Talk, because I'm just gonna say one word when you hear some of the things that Epstein said about the guy in the head office there. I'm just gonna say one word. I'll spell it out. Did you hear that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say one thing, right? Because a lot of people have been talking about Bubba and
Oh, yeah,
whether
that's another one, too.
that relates to Bill Clinton. I would just like to say, right, one thing. There is absolutely no hard evidence linking Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. Sorry, just had to say it. I just
My
had to say it.
The puns. Oh, my God. I've been seeing so much.
The puns are the best.
The puns. I just came here. I'm just on social media. I came here for the comments, and they did not disappoint. I'm telling you, that revelation right there was like, say what? And now he wants to investigate Bill Clinton. Maybe you don't want to do that.
Bill did not have sexual relations with that man.
Oh my God. This is crazy. And this is just emails. There's videotape. There's videotape.
Oh, listen, they and here's what kills me about the whole thing, right? And again, I go back to this. You have all the names. They have all the evidence. Nobody's been prosecuted. And in fact, they've gone out of their way not only not to prosecute, but to strike deals, to put things under the rug, to do whatever they can to get the people who were involved, right, to somehow, right, like, I mean, you have like Alan Dershowitz, right? Like,
yes.
Like, the man's name is all over the documents. He was a lawyer to Jeffrey Epstein, right? And yet he's still in the bar, and he's still this lawyer of prominence in this country, where he can go on, where they have him as guest stars on TV, and he gets to spew his bullshit, right?
Unbelievable.
Like, and the funniest part is like, you have a guy like Ralph Carr sitting there saying Frank has
16 convictions of nothing.
Right, and says that he disqualified himself for a role in government. Right, there's a freaking pedophile in the White House. Okay,
yeah.
And I'm not trying to compare the two, because really is no comparison. But here's the thing: I would not have supported Frank if I thought he did something wrong.
Yes.
Okay, right. The fact is this is why I left the Democratic Party. This was one of the reasons why I left the Democratic Party, was this idea. Biden had every opportunity, and his Justice Department had every opportunity to put the information out there, to release the information himself, and they refused. So this is not a left-right issue. I will be the first one to say this is not a left-right issue, and I'm really sick and tired of it being portrayed as a left-right issue. This is a top-bottom issue.
Absolutely, 100%.
All right. And sorry.
No, I'm just saying they are covering up for these wealthy billionaires and what they've done. And yeah, you're right. I didn't think about how the type of deals that might have been going on at these places. We obviously are going to focus on the sexual assault of children, of minors. That's a big one. But these people were also dealing.
You spend an entire weekend. Right. I mean, you're talking about 40, 50 something year old men, an entire weekend. I don't care how many girls are there. It's not like they're spending their
entire time in the bedroom.
They're not spending 24 hours a day in the bedroom. Right. Like, I mean, these guys are gathered around a table and they're plotting. Like they're plotting. They're plotting company takeovers. You had Larry Summers who was involved. He went down to the island. Okay, well, he's your Treasury Secretary. You had bankers down there. You
Yeah.
had governments there. What could he end up doing? He was in charge of interest rates. He was in charge of capital requirements for banks. Okay. You had bankers down there who wanted easement of their capital requirements in order for them to be able to lend out more money so they didn't have to hold as much money. I mean, these are little things that impact your daily lives because these impact the rates that you pay in terms of your mortgages, your car loans, all these other things. And all of it was being negotiated, right, from a standpoint where the wealthy were wheeling and dealing with girls and money and sacrificing you. So we have this sort of thing. Some people have, like, a lot of these new podcasts have started to do it. And I saw some senators talking about it. It's about how these impact you locally.
Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
What is the impact to you locally? And this is part of that impact. If they are making these deals, and this could be insurance, stupid things like insurance, interest rates, capital requirements for banks, lending, right? Who's going to have access to money? Insurance, health insurance, premiums,
And let me just add this. And we don't know the level of extortion because he was filming this information and he was connected to Peter Thiel, who we know is now the nation's leading surveillance expert here with Palantir. He wanted to go into surveillance with Peter Thiel. So when you put all that together, you have a lot of ammunition to extort these high-level individuals, to get them, to sway them in your direction for your power play, whatever that's going to be.
Or the consolidation of TV, which has now limited our ability to get real news, or a consolidation of newspapers, so that the inability of us to get local news, right? Like, people don't realize the impact that this actually had on their local lives. Everybody's talking about the victims and the girls, and that's very tragic. And I think that these people need to pay for that. There is more to this story, and it
Than
goes
just that.
much deeper than the girls, where we are all impacted. And it's not just us here in the United States. You're talking about worldwide. You are talking about wars. You are talking about arms deals that could have been made or that maybe didn't get made as a result of whatever type of extortion was going on. You're talking about the buying and selling of information, of national secrets. And it couldn't just be U.S. national secrets. It could be any number of national secrets. And you don't know who those are being sold to, right? So maybe nobody from the Chinese government was involved with Epstein, but doesn't mean that the Chinese government wasn't buying the information from Epstein.
That's wow. So
Right?
he's really in deep.
So you don't know. There's a lot of information here that you don't know, and how deep this could actually go and how broad this actually is. And I mean, there's a particular reason why Democrats and Republicans didn't want this information released. Okay.
Very, very significant. Very significant. Clearly, it is the biggest scandal ever to hit the White House. Probably, and we thought Watergate was bad.
Not the White House, the world.
The world.
We cannot fathom the extent of what was actually perpetrated, right? You hear about backroom deals all the time. We talk about them, right? Like locally all the time. We talk about backroom deals. This is like the
epitome.
This is the heart of a backroom deal. Like all of these are backroom deals. This is what these guys weren't flying on planes and going down to an island just for a sex retreat, right? You have to look at who was on the planes, right? Like, you're not talking,
exactly.
It wasn't like one person flying on a plane with a girl, right? You were talking about captains of industry all flying on the same plane, right? You're talking about people who would never be in a room together otherwise being on the plane or being in the island, right? You would have industry people who might not even have access to the Treasury Secretary, now all of a sudden having access to the Treasury Secretary,
Wow.
right?
That
And
really
not for nothing, yeah. And then you have Epstein, who had everything taped and had everything and all the information and everything recorded. So now all of a sudden you have to ask yourself, what did Epstein do with that information? He wasn't sitting there being generous and saying, I'm just going to keep all this information to myself.
Oh, no. There's all kinds of rumors. One rumor about a connection to Mossad. There's a rumor about, I mean, I don't know about that, but this is very
But why
serious.
not?
But why not? Exactly.
Are you telling me, listen, I don't think he was an agent of Mossad. Like, I mean,
But he might
I
have
think
shared information with them.
I think he was a mercenary. I think he was open to the highest bidder. And personally, my feeling is everything that I've heard about the guy just sounds, he was just a mercenary, and whoever was willing to pay him the most money for whatever information he had, he was selling it. So, his links to the Chinese government, his links to Mossad, his links to Putin, his links to third world nations, right, are probably all true. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody wants information. Everybody wants information. And if you have that much access to the people in power in the United States, the captains of industry, the government officials, top level government officials from the president on down to your defense secretary, to your Justice Department officials, to everybody, right? I mean, just imagine the chaos that you could, not only the chaos that you could put out there,
Yeah.
but imagine the money that you could make. Imagine
Oh,
the money you
yeah.
could make.
Yeah. With all the,
I mean, you're talking about a guy who started with nothing.
This is pretty serious. And so, it comes back to release the files. We don't give a shit who's in it. Hide the victims' faces and their names. But we, the people, have a right to know what's going on in there, because
Right.
that information is, I mean, it impacts everybody, all of us.
The problem is you don't know who has been. You could be voting for an official. Your government official could be compromised. Your senator, your congressman, your state representative, your local I mean, there could be somebody, you could be voting for somebody who's been compromised and you don't even know it, because
Yeah.
you've been sold a bill of goods. You're talking about families that could be compromised. I mean, we know that RFK might have had some involvement with Epstein. That could implicate the entire Kennedy family. You don't know.
And that family's no stranger to controversy.
Again, you just don't know what you don't know. This goes down to if this is government and we're supposed to be a government for the people, by the people, then, and the people don't have the right information, then we're not a government for the people, by the people. We're the government for the oligarchy, by the oligarchy, because you're just being fed propaganda to do their bidding and to get you on their side.
Yep. And one of those feeds of propaganda is normalizing the idea of raping young children, of raping young women, if you want to call them. They want to call them women. They're girls, 13, 14, 15 years old. They're not old enough to make a conscious decision to know or understand what they're getting themselves into. They just, they're told what they want to hear, and they're groomed. And then, this is what they were trying to say trans people are doing. No, it's rich, wealthy billionaires using a rich, wealthy English billionaire woman to coerce them by sounding sweet and trustworthy with her beautiful British accent. I'm doing a terrible British accent.
You are.
Used to be, but absolutely horrid accent. But, talking to them and telling them that they're beautiful and they could become models and come with me and I'll introduce you to someone who will turn you into a model. And it's a tragic story, because there's a lot of death related to this story, not just Epstein's. A lot of young women have committed suicide.
Again, you don't know the extent of the death, because it could be, you're talking about wars, you're talking about famine, you're talking about so many different things all over the world. You're talking about maybe the supporting of terrorist organizations. You're talking about, I mean, you're talking about military deals. I mean, there's so much that you could be talking about that you just don't know. And again, it's more than just girls.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a whole thing. And for anybody, I want to point this out. For anybody thinking, okay, that you're a politician, that you're a congressman, right, either in the Senate or in the House, give a shit about this issue. You're fucking kidding yourselves, okay? Because 90% of them are predators themselves. And,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it doesn't have to be girls, right? They are all sitting there lying to you about one thing or another, preying on your ignorance, okay? In that you are going to just believe everything that they say because you are of the same party as them. And I don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican. I really don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Okay. They
I
are
agree.
all so for them, it's, the same side of the same coin, whether you're preying on your constituency or you're preying on others, or you're preying on little girls, it doesn't matter at that point in time. It really doesn't, because that's just who they are.
Yeah.
And they don't give a shit. This idea of a petition, this idea that, do you know what they have to go through to get that information out? Like, the House has to pass it, the Senate has to pass it, Trump has to sign it into law. Like, none of that shit is going to happen. It's going to get filibustered in the Senate, okay? And if somehow they get cloture to go past the to get a vote in the Senate, right, you still got to get the 51 votes, which I don't know if you'll get enough Republicans to cross over to go against Trump. And then even if you get all that to happen, it still has to land on Trump's desk. And I guarantee you what's going to end up happening is that
he's going to veto it.
He'll veto it, but before it even gets there, that the Republicans or the Democrats, one or the other, somebody's putting a poison pill in that legislation.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a rumor, though, it's coming out more and more, that there could be a lot of defections on the Republican side to, in fact, release these files.
Well, do you know what's being bandied about in the Senate?
No. Well,
They want to add an abortion ban.
well, that's coming from the CR. Yeah, that's going to ACA. Yeah, the only way we'll.
But they're gonna throw that into everything.
Yeah. Well, they'll
throw that into everything. They'll throw it into the ACA first, then they'll throw it into the Epstein thing. So all the Republicans will vote for it, and all the Democrats will vote against it, and then they're going to turn around and say, "You see, the Democrats voted against releasing the Epstein files,
So now
only because there was an abortion ban in it."
they're
That's
taking
their
that
poison
part.
pill.
That's what they're putting in. I didn't hear that they're putting that
No,
in.
but they're gonna listen when the ACA stuff fails, which we know it will, right? They're gonna throw it into every bill that the Democrats want in order to ensure that there's a vote on it, ensure that the Democrats vote against it and Republicans vote for it. They're gonna poison pill everything.
Wow.
Okay. For anybody to think that there's going to be fair play in any
Oh
of
no,
this,
we're past fair
There-
play.
we're past that point. All you're getting on the news, all you're getting everywhere is just propaganda BS.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's out of control. So just kind of to wind up on this point, I guess we'll see what happens with the vote that's supposed to come. I think it's going to be knocked down in some way. Let's see if they try to do that with abortion. Obviously, they've thrown in that they want stricter abortions on stricter regulations on abortion when it comes to ACA. Basically, whether it means a full-on ban or they simply don't want reproductive health care to be paid for with ACA subsidies, which is ridiculous. Eventually, it's going to be all women's health care.
They just don't want nobody in America should, Americans should not be benefiting from their taxes. They just want, this is
crazy.
This is what we are seeing is the wealth. We're seeing a redistribution of wealth to the top.
On a massive scale, a massive
scale. And everybody, and listen, that the Senate, how much these senators and politicians don't care in the fact that they snookered into a bill, right, to reopen the government, a big payday for themselves, $500,000 payday for themselves,
At least.
right, for these politicians. That's your money. That's taxpayer money, right? They're literally finding legal ways to steal your money now, and they don't really care. They're just like, you know what? Everybody else is getting theirs. We're gonna get ours and get the fuck out. And if you're okay with that, all right, well, good for you.
Well,
I'm glad that that's what you want, but that isn't even remotely what any of the rest of us want, right?
yeah,
We
exactly.
don't want that at all.
We don't want that at all, but they dress it up real. They all these crisis actors on Fox News dress it up real pretty, so that it sounds like they were victims for having their phone records subpoenaed in connection with J6. You know what? That was an actual coup.
It
That was an
doesn't matter. Can you, if the government decides to investigate you, okay, and they subpoena your phone records, do you have an ability to sue for $500,000?
Nope, I gotta
Right?
just turn
And-
that shit over.
And not for nothing, people were convicted of a crime that day.
Connected to that
So-
subpoena.
Right. So it wasn't like they were doing it haphazardly or there wasn't a real crime committed. There was an actual real crime committed. People were convicted of that crime, right? And they subpoenaed records in relation to that same crime. Okay? And what these senators came out and said, and what these politicians and even the Republicans in the House said, you know what? We deserve a payday as a result of that. You notice how they limit if you have medical malpractice, you're now limited to $250,000, right, max, all right, what you can sue on. It's like 20 years ago that they did that. But they continue to limit your ability as an individual to sue and get money from not only the government but from private entities who actually wrong you. In this instance, they basically said $500,000 is ours. We're going to sue and we're going to get our money because we insured within the law that if we just file the lawsuit, we're going to get paid $500,000.
That is
Right.
out fucking rageous.
They literally wrote into the law a payday for themselves of $500,000, like a bonus for them
Yeah.
for doing all this bullshit, right? So I'm sick and tired. I no longer want to hear it, right, from the right or the left, right? I don't want to hear the bullshit. Oh, you just have to give us a chance.
No, you don't deserve chances anymore. I'm out of chances.
You're done.
You're done.
I'm done. You know what? You've been lying to us for years, just like you have been locally. I'm done with all the fucking lies. I'm an adult. I deserve the truth. I deserve to know what the hell's going on.
You're
and
a
I deserve
taxpayer.
all the information, right, to ensure that I'm making an informed decision. I'm sick and
Right.
tired of everything else. Everything else is just bullshit.
So there you go. And that's really ties everything together here is that we are being systematically lied to.
All right,
Systematically
that's
lied
it for
to.
us. Remember to like and subscribe. We're done.
Oh God. Don't worry, we're not leaving. Oh God. We're not completely done, but we're going to end here because this went pretty long on this whole Epstein thing and just corruption in general in government, just from the top all the way down. So we're going to get into this more. We're going to start expanding on these things because we want to show you just how corrupt government can really, really be. We're seeing it now, but we're also showing you that while it's happening up there, it's happening right here in your town. So again, if you've got any stories to tell, put them in the comments, drop us a DM. We want to hear it. We want to share it. Maybe even, if you're doing something, podcasting like us, talking about local stuff, we'd love to get you on here and hear your story. So we're looking to network, and I'm going to get into that in the next segment. But in the meantime, if you're still here, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, just like Neil said. Leave us a comment. Check that little bell. Click that little bell so we can annoy the hell out of you when we drop new videos, because we love you. All right? And we will see you soon. Take care, guys.